there's a little kid ghost demon ghoul goblin thing, I'm actually gonna quit. Oh, Mother of God! What the f***? I want this to be over. I shouldn't have done this, guys. I'm sorry. This is really bad. I think I made a mistake. What the fudge? Why did I do this? It's 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. Why did I do this? What the
Hello my friends, what's up? It's Kat here. Thank you so much for coming and joining me for what will hopefully just be a fun little video today to recap the absolute mental anguish that I self-induced for the month of October during our Reactober series, which I just wanted to say a huge thank you. I know those videos were the first time that a lot of you guys were seeing my channel, and I know I was new to you prior to, so if you were so inclined to check them out and even subscribe and stick around here, I'm so appreciative, and it really helped to make the experience that much more fun. I didn't know if it was really gonna pay off watching all of those back-to-back 10 horror movies in 1 month, because I don't think I ever disclaimed at the beginning of my quest when I started all the way back with Prometheus, but I was not a horror fan to begin with going into all of that, and I mainly was doing it knowing that it was gonna be for the content. It was gonna be for the laughs, for you guys, and for myself in hindsight, you know, after the initial scare had worn off, but I wouldn't have previously categorized myself as a fan of the horror genre, frankly, at all, truly, and I used to be the type of person who would question how anyone could genuinely actually enjoy horror movies and seek them out, like just watch them for fun and not just during the month of October to celebrate Halloween. I truly used to never understand the appeal, and I can say now that I kind of do. I can say for myself, at least, you know, the experience, yes, is absolutely terrifying, but at the same time, it's thrilling in the moment, and you kind of get this weird dose of adrenaline that can only be quenched by watching another freaking scary movie. I don't know, it just kind of makes your own life easier to handle in a way when you realize that the stuff that you're stressed about is nowhere near as stressful as the stuff that you're watching. I don't know, for me, that was my own personal experience. Ingesting them all back to back like that, I think it helped to just recover. It just forced me to move on. I couldn't toil over The Exorcist for 3 weeks and lose sleep over that because I had to go watch something else after the fact. So, but anyways, thank you, and you guys are the ones who made it worthwhile. I didn't know how well received that venture was going to be since I don't really cover horror content here on the channel, but it brought so many of you guys to the channel here, which I'm really grateful for, and you guys were constantly validating why I was doing it, which is, you know, the feedback that it was fun to watch and that you guys got a good laugh out of it, which is what I assumed would happen because, like I said, I am not a seasoned horror veteran by any means, and so that was quite a shock to my system. But today, I wanted to milk this for all that I possibly can and try to squeeze in one more video, at least till our next installment of SCAREDY CAT, or rather our first installment of the permanent SCAREDY CAT series here, which will be a monthly recurrence on the channel, where we are going to be doing some more horror film reactions, so they're not going anywhere. I just needed to reduce the frequency in which they occur, but the horror reactions aren't going anywhere. But for now, I wanted to do a little bit of a recap since I did watch 10 scary movies, all new to me, in the month of October, and I wanted to do a little bit of a ranking in hindsight, a little retrospective to see how I feel about each film, to share my thoughts and full analysis of the fear factor, where they all stand on a fear ranking now that I have watched all of them. This is by no means going to be a ranking of how I feel about the film as a whole in general. I'm going to be ranking these from 10th place to 1st place, 1st being the most scary in my opinion, 10th being the least scary, but this is not indicative of how I feel about the movie overall, how I feel about it as a film in general, or the quality. This is purely just how much it scared me personally. So if I put your favorite movie at the bottom of the list, please do not take that as a sign that I'm bashing it. It just means that it didn't bother me as much as some of these others, but they are all still contextually close. The film which I deemed the least scary here on this list is still like maybe a 5 out of 10, you know, it's still halfway scary. All of these affected me in some ways or another, but in order to spread the love, we're going to be ranking from least to most scary, of course, ranking all 10 of them, but then I'm also going to be balancing that with, we are going to be rating the top 3 jump scares and the top 4 just I didn't know what to qualify this as. The most distressing moments, my least favorite moments that I probably was toiling over for the longest amount of time. When I was at my lowest, when I truly had the most regret in life and wanted to quit and just drop all of this and never watch another one of these again. The most impactful, what rocked me to my core. Just to balance it out a little bit, so that way if you feel like I put your favorite personal movie at the bottom of the list, some of these are leaning towards the bottom of the list, but they had pretty standout moments that really made me question my life decisions and why I was even bothering to watch them in the first place. So there's balance everywhere. Everyone's gonna get some love today. So without further ado, as you can see, nothing special. We've got all 10 of the films that we watched down at the bottom here with our rankings. So without further ado, let's get in. We're going to be starting from least scary, heading all the way up to the number 1 slot of the most scary. For me, what scared me the most? I'm in no way, shape, or form trying to make a generalization, and my word is not gospel here. And I'm also well aware that these are in the context of personal bias. You know, the order in which I watched these certainly influenced my opinions. For example, Conjuring, if I had watched that earlier in the month, I probably would have been way more effed up. But by that point, I had gone a little bit numb. I was a little bit desensitized. I'm well aware that if I had watched some of these in a different order or watched certain ones, you know, at the beginning of the month versus the end of the month, you know, that definitely changed my biases here and just the way I felt about some of these movies in general, because admittedly by the end I was quite numb. So take that into context as well. And this is all, like every tier list I do on my channel, very subject to change. If you were to ask me a month from now, these could all be ranking differently. But for now, following Reactober, this is where it stands. In 10th place, with the least scary ranking, is going to be Prometheus. Now, stay tuned, because I did enjoy this movie, but it certainly had its moments that I was deeply, 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 deeply disturbed by. I'm gonna give this 5 scares out of 10, because I do think being a sci-fi fan in general, I am certainly, I would say, way more of a sci-fi fan inherently than a horror fan. I think that helped to make it more palatable for myself. I wasn't necessarily that afraid when I was going into this movie. I was more disturbed. Don't worry though, we are going to discuss that. In 9th place with 5.5 out of 10 scares, don't judge me for this, okay? Please don't hate me for this. It's going to be Nightmare on Elm Street, y'all. Listen, this does not reflect how I feel about this movie, and I know that it's a classic, so I know I might get shade for this, especially for those of you who grew up on Freddy Krueger and this franchise. I do like Freddy as a villain. He did creep me out, but just in the grand scheme of where the rest of these movies fall, this one I think I just actually enjoyed the process more. I was more curious watching it. I think I spent more time occupied on trying to decipher what the frick was going on with their dreams, what was a dream, what was real life, and I ended the movie, as you guys saw, in a state of brain blast. Like, I was way more curious trying to dissect the ending than I was necessarily afraid of Freddy Krueger. There were moments. I was more so just intrigued the whole time. I think nothing about this was necessarily too scary, too gory. There was never a moment during that where I wasn't enjoying the viewing experience and reeling from fear. I enjoyed the whole thing, and there wasn't a point that I necessarily was like, I want to quit, you know, whereas some of these made me question my life decisions. This was way more enjoyable than it was scary to watch. In 8th place, with 6 out of 10 scares. Oh, please don't hate me for this one, y'all. I'm probably gonna get roasted because I'm putting a lot of these classics at the bottom here, but it's gonna be Evil Dead. Now listen. This one did get to me. It did impact me, but it was more the gore factor. I was severely underprepared for the levels of just blood and grits and all whatever the frick the props department was cooking with. Literally had freaking oatmeal pouring out of their dead carcasses. Oh god. I'm viscerally remembering how much this made me gag, and I had to literally bleep out some of the most heinous dry heaving you probably would have ever heard if I didn't bleep it out of that video. So while yes, this certainly had some elements of scare to it, I was much more trying to just hold on to my lunch, you know what I'm saying? It was more gory for me, which after a while kind of just became very campy. You know, I knew what to kind of anticipate and expect, but again, this is part of a larger franchise, so who's to say that could change going forward, but based on the commentary from some of you guys afterwards, it seems like that franchise does lean into the camp and almost comedic aspect going forward, which I'm very curious to check out, and I do really love Ash as a final boy, as the final man, and would be curious to see what the frick else is in store for him, what his larger role is as the sole survivor. So don't hate me, because I know this one was highly requested, and I know it's a lot of your guys' favorites, and that it's a classic and an OG, but for me, it just didn't scare me that much. It just made me want to throw up. In 7th place, with 6.5 out of 10 scares, that is going to be Predator. Now, I do love the element of fear that they employed in this movie by building it up with their reactions. The terror that you see with Arnold and his men, the entire group, as they're slowly getting peeled off, and the fact that they don't reveal the full Predator till like the very end of the movie, I freaking really loved that. I actually would love to do like a full video essay. I pretty much practically did in my review of this movie, of why I really enjoyed the build-up, the way that they employed these macho men who've probably seen more crazy shit than any of us will in our entire lifetime out on the battlefield, but they were still petrified. I loved the elements of terror that they used for this, and I cannot believe I'm freaking saying this, y'all, because I went into this venture being really anxious about how this was going to be affecting my sleep schedule, my dreams. The only film that I had actual lasting psychological floating around in my subconscious remains from watching, it was The Predator, y'all. Like, what the hell? None of the other films that we watched this month have been infiltrating my dreams, thank Jesus. Like, thank God. That's a blessing from the universe, because I really thought I was gonna be way more effed up during my sleep. This has to get brownie points. It was Predator. That's the only one that I had bad dreams about after the fact, so that's gotta mean something, and I think that's just because the Predator is especially creepy. Coming in 6th place with 7 out of 10 scares, it's gonna be The Cabin in the Woods. Now, I do think the comedy elements of this, the larger plot overall, the mystery at hand, you know, trying to figure out what the frick was going on in this movie, that certainly helped to make it more palatable, but it certainly had some frickin' really intense jump scares that I was not prepared for. When I went into this, seeing that it was a comedy horror, I thought that meant it was going to be a little bit more tame, but the horror elements of this, the jump scares in particular, took me out. I really actually almost couldn't handle some of them. Took a few years off my life, so this is going in the middle of the road here, up in 6th place. In 5th place, at the halfway point, with 8 out of 10 scares, we have The Silence of the Lambs. Now, I know I was getting flack in the comment section because a lot of people were saying, this isn't horror, this is thriller, psychological, which, yes, it is, but I was still clutching my pearls, y'all. There were still moments of this where I was genuinely terrified. You know, this certainly employed different types of scare. It's not like in-your-face blood, guts, gore. It's not like the surface level kind of terror that we see, or horror rather, in some of these other ones, but it's like a deeper psychological fear for Clarice, fear of being in the presence of Hannibal Lecter, and I've got to give it to it, the final maybe 20 minutes of this movie, when she's on the trail and you realize that it's just her up against Buffalo Bill all alone, when Hannibal has been holding her hand basically through this entire thing, and now she's literally in the dark, you know, fighting for her life, fighting to try to capture Buffalo Bill. Absolutely terrifying. So it was a different type of fear. It was that terror. This one goes up in the halfway point. Yes, it's not outright horror, and it's certainly not on a different level as some of the other ones as we're getting into the top 4 here, but it employed a different type of fear, and I just cannot deny the fact that I was on the edge of my seat, ready to pass out, y'all. I was ready to faint because I was so, yes, I was gripped because it's thrilling, but I was genuinely terrified at the end of this film, so I can't ignore the fact that it really took my breath away, and I was holding on for dear life. Here we go. Entering the top 4. Now, this is where things might start to get controversial, so this is where I'm going to remind y'all that these are just my own personal opinions, okay? And I'm sorry. So, coming in 4th place with 9.5 out of 10 scares. That's why I ranked them out of 10 as well, just to show that there's only like a 0.5 discrepancy between some of these as we're getting up. All of these within the top 4 I would categorize as very freaking scary, okay? And I regret. From here on out, there is regret of embarking on these films. So just because something is ranking in 4th or 3rd place, that does not mean that I deem it easy to watch by any means. Everything from here on out was a tough one. In 4th place, please don't hate me, it's gonna be The Conjuring. I do think this is where I think some of my own personal bias is coming to play here, because if I had saved this because I saved this one for the end intentionally, thinking that it was gonna rock my world, like, to a severe degree. Like, I intentionally saved this for last because I've always been scared of this movie and what I've heard people say about this movie and this franchise, so I really didn't want to embark on this one. If I'm to give this credit, this is the one I wanted to watch the least because of my fear going into it. I think all of that preemptive fear helped just brace me for it once we actually got to it, and not that I was having a good time, but I think it made it easier for me to watch, easier to kind of anticipate. By this point, again, I saved this one for the final film that we watched this month. I was numb, all right? I was pretty desensitized. It does have some severe jump scares that really got to me, but I think in comparison with Exorcist, and perhaps that's unfair of me to be comparing the two of them, but because they had maybe the most overlap and similarities in regards to the subject matter of demons and possession and whatnot, I think having watched this after The Exorcist, there were elements of Exorcist that were just scarier for me personally that I think knocked this one down a bit, or just made it easier, you know, to watch because I knew what to expect a little bit. I had more knowledge of the subject and what to anticipate. So don't take that personally. That is by no means me saying that this movie's not scary. It is. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And by this point, I think the fear was just a lot of the jump scares for me and whatnot. So that's why it's down here in 4th place. Whereas the fear that I felt in these top 3, I can't even describe. I can't put words to it. So going forward, in 3rd place with 9.75 out of 10 scares is going to be it. This one is coming as a shock to me, y'all. Listen, I'm sorry. I know I'm gonna get flack for this. This is where it's just personal preference comes into play, and this is unexpected for me. If you were to tell me that I was gonna be more scared of it than I was of The Conjuring, I would not have believed you, and I still don't believe it myself. So it is up here because if you watched it, you know. Maybe I also should not have drank a Monster Energy before that one. I had way too much flowing through my veins in conjunction with the fear. It was just a lot of contributing factors. But this rocked me to my core. Again, maybe it's because I went into, you know, Conjuring, for example, really bracing for it, and it ended up matching, you know, the level that I thought it was going to be at, versus I went into it highly underestimating it, and it actually freaking rocked my world. It rocked me to my core, and it's not because I'm scared of Pennywise, it's not because I'm scared of clowns. It's been a hot minute, so I've deduced that it's not necessarily, well, actually, yes, I am freaking scared of Pennywise. Not scared of clowns, but scared of him. The fact that there were children involved, the fact that it kind of reduces you down to your own childhood, just primal fears and what. I just was really not prepared for how far they were going to take some of this. I think the main reason for that is because there were children involved, and they pushed it further than I really anticipated. So this, I can't believe it, is in 3rd place. I'm sorry. Again, this is all personal. Listen, I'm sorry. And here we go for the top 2. This is where it's maybe going to be a little bit divisive, but I've got to go with my gut. And in 2nd place is The Exorcist, which yes means that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to take the dub for our Reactober scariest experience. Now, you all watched it. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you saw my reaction. If not, go watch it. But that lived up to the hype. That certainly lived up, and I'm still amazed by the fact that it truly taps into like primal horror, things that cannot be freaking just explained with words, how that movie makes you feel. I know I got flack in the comment section for saying like, I don't think this is gonna feel outdated or anything like that, which it doesn't, and I think that is a testament to the fact that this film, it could have been made any year, and maybe even now. I know they just tried to remake it and it didn't perform as well. There was something about this original film that will stand the test of time because it tapped into just true fear and regret that I felt, at least. And I think that is a very big testament to, as many of you guys pointed out, it doesn't try to scare you right out of the gate. It takes the time. It's such a slow burn to really get you attached to the characters and the emotional thread here of the story. Everyone has skin in the game, so when shit starts to hit the fan, you are genuinely, utterly terrified. And yeah, maybe some of that could be the same kind of fear that I felt during It, you know, the fact that Reagan is a young girl and this is happening to her and you genuinely don't know whether she's gonna live or survive. But yes, I had severe moments of regret with this movie. However, I came out of it way more unscathed than I thought. I felt severe regret at the time, and I immediately had to like flee my apartment and go for a walk and be out in public for the rest of the day. I needed the sunshine. I needed anything to take my mind off of it because I could not be here alone. I went to bed that night at like freaking 9:30 p.m. I think I was just so emotionally exhausted after having watched it. I didn't think I was going to be able to fall asleep, but I did. And I'm grateful that I recovered way more rapidly than I thought I was going to after watching this. I really thought it was going to linger with me longer than it did, which wasn't really that long at all. Like I moved on pretty quick. It's just a really good movie. And so I think that's what I came to appreciate after the fact, which helped diminish my scares, you know, afterwards. But I cannot deny that at the time I was severely regretting my life decisions. And yeah, should I probably maybe have saved that one for a little bit later in the month and not have watched it third when I wasn't numb or desensitized? Yeah, maybe that would have been helpful in the long run, but you live and you learn. And did I learn a lesson after our first place winner here, the motherfucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Oh, this film takes the cake because I can't deny that my opinion still rings true here. My immediate words after watching this, my immediate gut reaction was, wow, I would rather rewatch The Exorcist as opposed to this ever again. I never want to think about this again. Yes, have I come around? Have I had a similar experience as I did with Exorcist where I've been able to appreciate, and as I've learned more about the fact that this was an independently made film and what they were able to accomplish and the cultural impact with the budget that they had, you know, it's another testament to the fact that, yes, it is just a really good film. But I don't ever want to think about it. I don't know. I think I went in with a healthy amount of expectation for it. You know, an appropriate amount. I'm already stuttering again just thinking about this movie, y'all. If you saw that reaction, you know that I was reduced to absolute. I couldn't even speak. I was gone mute. I still don't even think I can convey with words how that movie made me feel, in spite of I think I went in with an appropriate amount of bracing myself for it, and I thought it was going to just be surface level killer going around slashing everybody up with a chainsaw, but it was so much more than that. The way it was filmed, the sound design, everything about it created this just unnerving eeriness that I think just knocked me off my guard right out of the gate. You know, I was just scared immediately from start to finish, even though the terror itself didn't necessarily kick in until, you know, maybe halfway through. I would willingly rewatch any of these other films on this list again and be fine. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre I will never be able to watch again. I never want to watch any of the other remakes. I need to look out for myself, and I can never ever go near that franchise again. That's I can't talk. That's why it's at the top of our list. So there's our rankings. Now you know which films scarred me the most. But again, I'm sure that's not necessarily coming as a shock to those of you. If you did watch my reaction, you'll know I felt that one viscerally. But here we go. We're gonna move into the honorable mentions now of our top 3 jump scares and our top 4 least favorite and most distressing moments. In regards to the jump scares, I don't know if these are in any particular order necessarily, but these are just the top 3 that stand out for me. We have, of course, Leatherface showing up in the woods. Stop. I can't explain it. I think it was just a perfect combination of the fact that I was already severely on edge, and that's when I knew shiz was truly going to start hitting the fan. And I also was led to believe by the opening crawl of that movie that Sally and her brother Franklin were going to be the survivors. Obviously, Sally was the final girl, but I thought Franklin was going to be okay too. So when Leatherface popped out and eviscerated him, all bets were off. I was like, what the frick? And many of you guys pointed out in the comment section that one thing that movie does really successfully is withhold. You know, you think there's going to be a lot more blood and guts with a movie like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the title, but they only show you a certain amount and your brain pieces the rest of it together. I was just so on edge already at that point, and it just came out of nowhere, and it got me. My neighbors, I'm so sorry. For this whole month, actually. They probably freaking hate me. Second top jump scare, we have The Conjuring. In an unlikely twist, the moment where those goddamn frames were falling off the wall is actually what scared me the most in that movie. That... Mother of God! made my heart freaking stop. And it's not even necessarily like, oh, it's a moment when the demons are popping out. It was literally just when the demons are making all the frames smash into a million freaking pieces. But it came out of nowhere, and at that point I was just so #done with all of this and thought that I could maybe make it out unscathed, and that moment just took a year off of my life. So shout out to them. One of the most memorable freaking jump scares in all of this. It wasn't even that intense of a moment. It's not even like it's, oh, the Leatherface popping out of the middle of nowhere to kill her brother. It's literally just all those frames falling off the wall into a million pieces. And our third and final top jump scare highlight is going to go to Cabin in the Woods, y'all.
Okay, no matter what happens, you gotta stick.
The whole context for that, I think it's just a perfectly executed jump scare. It's fresh off of Chris Hemsworth dying, so you think that Jesse Williams' character is about to become the new hero here. It's like, all right. It just was so out of nowhere, so perfectly timed. Just absolutely chef's kiss. Like, good for them. And that one also took a few years off of my life. And finally, moving on to our last category, which is my least favorite moments in the entirety of Reactober. These are my least favorite moments because these are when I was the most scared, when I was the most terrified, when I truly was questioning life the most and wanted to just end it all there. I just wanted to pause and quit and not come back. And I would have faced public shaming and said, hey guys, sorry, I'm not going to be able to post this reaction because I only watched half the movie and couldn't keep going. So in no particular order again, of course, we have the library scene from It.
I want this to be over.
When the little headless boy is chasing. Oh my god, I just can't. I think that was a combination of the monster flowing in my veins. Probably wasn't a good idea to chug an energy drink before going into that. I think it had me buzzing on a different level of adrenaline, so it was just fueling my, it wasn't great conditions. I wasn't doing myself any favors with that. Number 2, once again, in no particular order, we have the you-know-what scene from The Exorcist. Need I say more?
What the? Oh my! I regret this. Ah, God! Oh, the. Sorry. Oh, is that the worst of it? Please tell me.
Again, this lived up to the hype. This is what took the cake for me when I really realized, oh, they are not messing around here. Because as you guys observed, the whole 45 minutes of my reaction leading up to that, I'm just like, what the frick? This isn't that scary. When's it gonna hit? You know, what's gonna happen? That moment kicked in, and I truly was humbled, put in my place, reminded. I've never seen anything like that, and I don't think I will see anything like that ever again. Third, we've got the Prometheus C-section. That scene, actually.
I'm about to quit this. I'm about to turn this off. What the? Oh!
I'm genuinely, see, this is why Prometheus, it ranked on the least scary, right, of our list. But this scene, if we're going off of that alone, I can't stop thinking about it. It is actually, that has stuck with me actually for quite a while. And I was just so deeply disturbed and irate, y'all. The more I think about it, have a female character who's incapable of carrying children of her own, which is an incredibly difficult thing to deal with, by the way. Like, that's a truly tragic thing to think about. It's truly tragic. And then to impregnate her with an alien. I'm so sorry, but I cannot get over it. That is unforgivable. After I got over the physical illness that scene put me through, because I was not bargaining for that at all. That was so much more than I bargained for. I moved on to absolute just anger associated with it. So I regretted every decision. That was the first movie that we watched, y'all. Like, I thought we were going to be easing in. I was like, let me start with something that I don't think is going to scare me that much, which clearly it didn't in the long run. That ranked, the least scary out of our top 10 list, but that moment took the cake. Our fourth and final of my least favorite moments, it's going to be, of course, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre once again.
I shouldn't have done this, guys. I'm sorry.
Immediately following the jump scare, when Sally's running through the woods and you realize this is all over, this was a mistake. That's when it truly kicked in, and probably maybe the moment out of all of my Reactober ventures where I was truly the most scared to my core. I just wanted to say, no, it's over. I'm already past the point of no return, and I can't do this anymore, and I'm gonna pay for this later in my dreams tonight, which miraculously I haven't. I couldn't be home alone. I had to go out to like cafes to go and edit, because that's how truly, like, I just didn't want to rewatch this. I didn't want to be alone. I had to just go out in public to do my work, to fight through editing this movie to rewatch it again. Like, it had the most lasting effect. It was bad. And it was in that moment truly when Sally's running through the woods and you just hear, I mean, so much of the terror of that movie is just in the sound, and you know it's there. That's truly the moment when I felt the most regret and was like, you know what, I might just quit this whole thing now. Ooh, so that's it, y'all. That's our list. That was a fun little retrospective, you know, a little recap, a little rehash of everything that we endured last month. Please do not take any of these personally if I put your favorites at the bottom of my list in terms of scare. Again, that is not indicative or reflective at all of how I feel about it as a film in general. But I consider myself lucky, and I do feel like I got out relatively unscathed, because if you had told me at the beginning that the only one I was going to have a bad dream about was freaking Predator, wouldn't have believed you. So I consider myself lucky for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am a little bit sad that Reactober is over, because again, as scared as I was throughout the month, it actually was really fun. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Let me know. I'd love to hear your guys' rankings if you've watched all these films as well, or if you watched along. I know some of you guys were watching some of these for the first time too in my reaction. Like, wow, thank you. Sorry to subject you to all of this, but I would actually really love to see how differently all of our rankings would turn out to be, what scares each of us differently. So if you're feeling so inclined, drop your list below of how you would rank these. I'm very curious to see. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna call that a wrap on Reactober here. I hope you guys are doing so well as always, and I will see you guys again very, very soon. Bye, guys.